Hey, good morning, everyone. So I want to say this. I want to preference this way. This is going to be a little bit of a rant. Okay, we have update regarding our Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Now we know from yesterday. I did a video regarding this entire scandal with Pete Hegseth and this double tap. We know a double tap is basically a target being hit more than once. So there was a boat in Venezuela that Pete Hegseth, our Secretary of Defense, and our Army officials apparently thought that boat was carrying drugs. They were basically trafficking drugs. There's no intelligence. There's nothing that indicates that boat was carrying drugs. This was what our intelligence, like our Secretary of Defense, and what people believed, but there was nothing that concretely said that those people on that boat were drug traffickers carrying drugs, bringing drugs to the United States of America. That's the first thing. The second thing is, even in war, there are rules of engagement. There's rules and regulations. There's ways to do things, even in war. I think the general public believes that if we're in war, that all bets are off. We can do whatever we want. We can unalive however many people we want. That's not how it goes. If someone is surrendering, even if they were a combatant, which means they were being combative with you, they were engaging. If they decide, I am surrendering, I do not want to fight anymore, I'm putting my hands up, you cannot kill them. You cannot shoot them because they are surrendering. The people on the boat, the people that is believed to be drug traffickers, were not engaging, right? They were not shooting at our officials. They were not engaging in combat. They were not being combative. So to not only strike, but double strike this particular boat is considered a war crime. Because, now listen to this part. The first strike, to me, in my opinion, considering there was no intelligence illustrating that these people were indeed drug traffickers, the first strike is questionable. The second strike is a war crime because there were two remaining victims, two remaining people. I'm not going to call them victims because we don't know. We literally do not know whether or not these were indeed drug traffickers, right? So I'm not going to call them victims. We had two people that were on the boat that apparently survived the first strike. Then it was said that there was another strike, and people are testifying and basically saying that Pete Hegseth ordered to kill them all. That is a war crime, right? So there's people on, this is a bipartisan belief. There's people on the right, there's people on the left, there's Army officials that's basically saying this was a war crime. Now, that was yesterday. That was the story yesterday. We all know the details of that reporting. Yesterday, it was said that, Donald Trump basically answered on Air Force One whether or not he believed Pete. He said he believed Pete. He don't think Pete did that. Okay. However, now the White House is basically pushing the responsibility on an admiral that's in our Army. This pisses me off. Now, I told you guys yesterday, there is no cover. You can't say, oh, well, they told me to do it, so I did it. If you are an Army official, if you work in our military, you know better. That is the reason the 6 Democratic lawmakers were basically saying you have an obligation to the Constitution to not carry out illegal, unlawful orders. This is an example of that. Kill them all is an example of that. That is the reason those 6 Democratic lawmakers made that video for people who were so pissed and was saying, well, nothing like that will ever happen. You say what now? People literally was so mad and saying they're undermining the president, they're undermining the Secretary of Defense. Nothing like that will ever happen. Why did they need to make that video? Not even a month later, Not even, I don't even think it was 2 weeks later, we have a situation like this. That's why they made the video. We're in a very different administration. We are in a very different time. You don't have to accept it. It is the reality. So what bothers me immensely is the fact that Pete Hegseth, even though I understand that it's not a, it's not like a cop-out. You can't just say somebody told you to do it. But the fact that Pete Hegseth is basically putting this on an admiral is so disgusting, because to me, the buck stops with the responsibility of the leader. He is the leader in this situation. So the fact that he's going to allow one of his admirals to take all the accountability and responsibility is disgusting. It's disgusting. But this is what happens when you put people in office who are woefully unqualified. Pete Hegseth came into public life talking about DEI, talking about people being unqualified. He is the most unqualified Secretary of Defense we've ever had in the history of this country. But you got to remember, when they say DEI, they mean black and brown people. That's exactly what it is. See, the thing is, they like to gaslight and they like to talk, oh no, it's about credentials. It's about accomplishments. It's about, like, how is it about that when we have one of the most unqualified Secretary of Defense in history? He has a cabinet that is not diverse at all, and they've been making mistakes every fucking month. Every month, it's something all the time. Maybe if you had some little color in there, maybe if you had some people who were qualified, you wouldn't make these mistakes. So, like I said, Pete Hegseth was introduced to public life, to political life, talking about DEI and people not being qualified. We had Signalgate. Now we have you doing a double tap. And you know who he replaced? A black man that was overly qualified. The audacity of these people is disturbing. So, it's very unfortunate. It's very sad what is happening. It's sad that our military and our army is being put in this place where people are behaving in a very politically partisan way. Because remember, our military is not supposed to be about politics at all. This is supposed to be about defending the homeland, protecting our country. But now you're so focused on DEI, you're so focused on making sure that black and brown people are not in those spaces. You're making mistakes with our military. I can't even think straight, bro. I'm so irritated, because nothing bothers me more than to see the play, to know what somebody's doing, and we're just all supposed to ignore it. Like, when they first start talking about DEI, when they first start trying to kick women out of the military, all of this disgusting shit, and they're supposed to be the ideal of accomplishment or success or credentials. Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host, the weekend Fox News host, he gonna tell us about qualifications and who has the credentials and who's the most qualified. DEI to them means black and brown people. Has absolutely nothing to do with credentials. It don't, because look at who, okay. I told you guys at the beginning of the video this was going to be a little bit of a rant, because I've been watching all of these things very, very closely, and what stands out to me the most is we have in the Trump administration, I think Marco Rubio is probably the most qualified person in the entire administration. We have Kristi Noem, the puppy killer. We have Pete Hegseth, the drunk. We have what is Cash Patel? Must I go on? Must I go on? But these are the same people who want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and not being qualified. Now we have our Secretary of Defense that's going to push all of the responsibility and all of the blame on an admiral in our army. But at least they not black and brown, huh? Like, comment, and subscribe.